subscribe to that blog so that we can keep our traffic numbers up and you can keep up with everything that's going on. The newsletter comes out once a week. So, I mean, there's just no reason not to do it. Hit the subscribe button. Also, I want to say hello to all the new subscribers who've recently joined. And I want to also point you to Urban Family Talk, where we have our conference coming up. It's a marriage and family conference, August 17th through 18th. It's in Tupelo, Mississippi. And at that conference, we're going to have a number of national speakers as well as all of the hosts from Urban Family Talk. You're going to love that. You don't want to miss that either. The early registration, last day for that is today. And then afterwards, you pay a little bit more to register and go in on there. And then the cost is $35 per person. And there's a conference within the conference for kiddos. So kiddos can come. I know it's Friday evening and Saturday. So if you have kids with you on Saturday, as most of us do, and you need to have them busy as well, we have content and programming for them that they're going to enjoy. And so the conference is the 17th through the 18th in Tupelo, Mississippi. That's August. And kids get in for free. And if you need a booth for your ministry or your book or what have you, that dovetails in with the marriage and family theme that we're going with here, please, $50 and you get that whole setup and access to all of the people who will be coming through the conference. So go to urbanfamilytalk.com, click the link, and you can register, and it will be so awesome for you. And so right now, who did we just hear? Dershowitz. You got Alan Dershowitz. He's on Fox. He's talking about this frenzy to get Trump and how it's really one of those things where you see the motives behind what liberals are doing. And so for people who just say, oh, they just oppose President Trump, they just dislike him. They dislike him now because he's a Republican, but they used to love him. So this is an ideological thing. And Dershowitz explains a lot in that clip. I thought it was really good for us for today. And so now I want to listen to a little bit of information from Clapper. So you've got Clapper, who's now an employee of CNN. Within less than a year of leaving the administration of the Obama administration and also the Trump administration. And it's weird because you would think there'd be some kind of rule about how much time would have to transpire before he did that. And so we've got that, the subject of leaks. And of course, now they're trying to do a hit job on Representative Devin Nunes. Now, Devin Nunes has been a thorn in the side of anyone who just wants to make things easy and sweet and special. And on people on the left, people who are desperate to prove that Donald Trump is not only the boogeyman, he's not only the devil, he's not only the most evil person you've ever come into contact with, he's not only every worst nightmare you've ever had, but he's also a colluder and almost someone who's committed treason. That's the only thing they haven't tossed at him so far. So let's listen to number 6. Then I'm going to tell you what normally happens to leakers and 3 scary FBI scandal factors that you have to know. So let's go in there.
I didn't have any contact with media until after I left the government on the 20th of January. So I don't quite understand, at least what I've read, that somehow I leaked about the dossier.
So let me get, so you didn't leak anything about the dossier to any media?
No, I mean, I talked about it after I left the government, but not during that period, and certainly not between the 6th of January and the 10th when the president-elect himself talked about it.
Or maybe not. Former intelligence chief James Clapper now being accused of, in fact, very much leaking about that infamous Steele dossier and then lying to Congress about it when he shared it with CNN. The president has already tweeted on this. If we have that tweet, guys, I physically have it in front of me, but I do want to bring it up with our next guest, Devin Nunes, who chairs that committee. This from the president, chairman. It's very good to have you. Joins us on the phone. Clapper lied about fraudulent dossier leaks to CNN. Fox News. He is a lying machine who now works for fake news CNN, so obviously not a fan of CNN. All right, now back to you, Chairman. Did he lie? Do you have unequivocal proof he lied?
Well, from the Brett Baer interview the other night, which, by the way, was absolutely excellent, one of the best interviews I've seen in a long time, Neil, we now know that Comey was talking about CNN having this dossier, having this information, wanting to go with it. We directly confronted Mr. Clapper in the interview. We asked him directly if he had talked to Mr. Tapper about it, and he said that he in fact did talk about it. So, I don't know if he forgot his missed the dates, but definitely it's inconsistent. And look, he has some explaining to do. If he did in fact confirm to news media outlets classified information that was briefed to the president-elect in Congress, then we have a problem.
And we do, because Comey has now admitted that that's exactly what he did. Now, look, I'm not over here advocating for people to go to jail. I mean, that's horrible. That's a horrible outcome. But I also don't think we should have this huge double standard where people have literally gone to jail for doing less, and these guys are out, still just going on the media, going on all the shows, hawking a book like Comey's doing. And so I want to make sure that people know exactly what's happening before. What's happened to people before when they've taken something from their workplace, which was a government building, and they've leaked it to media? What has happened? Well, we've always talked, it's like a regular one that I bring, the first one I always go to, what happens when you make a mistake at the job and you're working for the government and you're low level, a sailor or something like that. I always talk about the young man, Christian Saucier. He went to prison, okay? He had photos in the classified areas of a nuclear submarine, and he was pardoned by President Trump. And obviously that's a double standard. But who else has, because if it's just one person, you can say, well, that case was different because he was a sailor and he was on active duty, and we're talking about the head of the FBI. The standard has to be higher, some crap like that. We don't buy into that, but that's what people will say. So let's talk about someone else. You've got Terry Albury, a 39-year-old former Minnesota FBI counterterrorism agent. Okay, so also in the same wheelhouse as our friend James Comey. He works in the Minnesota FBI counterterrorism agency. He pled guilty this month to leaking classified documents to a reporter. Yes. And then in a statement, the African-American former agent said he knew it was illegal, but felt he had to act against a culture in the Bureau that often treats minority communities with suspicion and disrespect. Under his plea agreement, Albury faces a likely sentence of 37 to 57 months. That's over 5 years in prison. He felt morally obligated to leak the information that he shared. Does this sound different to you? Only he's going to jail and we got Comey out hawking books. But that's not all. There's also the case of 25-year-old reality winner. Remember that story? We covered it right here on this show. And it was also like a double story because the woman's name is Reality Winner. She was a federal contractor from Georgia, and she was charged last summer with removing classified material from a NSA, National Security Agency facility, and mailing it to a news outlet. So reporters are involved here, and people who work for the federal government are involved here, and classified information is involved here. Releasing classified material without authorization threatens our nation's security and undermines public faith in government, Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein said at the time. That's part of the quote. The rest of it is, people who are trusted with classified information and pledge to protect it must be held accountable when they violate that obligation. So when are people going to connect the dots and say you can't determine the classification on documents with that contain information about conversations you had with someone who's above you in the classification thread line? You've got President Trump, the highest classification level there is, and then you've got the FBI director. Oh, he's high up the food chain, but he's not the president of the United States. They have communications. He determines what's classified and what's not, and leaks what he says isn't classified. Of course, it's to his own benefit. He called it his insurance policy. He leaks that to the media in order to gain access to a special prosecutor to investigate the person he had the conversations with. If that's not illegal, then these other people ought to not be going to jail. One or the other. Am I right? So then you've got these 3 scary FBI scandal factors that you should know. Okay, so first, there's Horowitz's revenge. You've got the Department of Justice Inspector General Michael Horowitz, who's releasing a report, an investigative report, and it's shortly to be within all of our little hot, sweaty hands. Horowitz is among the most respected and effective IGs ever appointed, but former President Obama, who nominated him in 2011, might regret this the most because the Inspector General's Act of 1978 authorizes IGs and their investigators and auditors to obtain and examine any official document necessary to carrying out their responsibilities in fighting waste, fraud, and corruption in the United States government. Presidents appoint the IGs, but those IGs report to Congress, making them an important component of congressional oversight of the executive branch. And that's that founder's wisdom that you're talking about right there. So a few months before Horowitz was sworn in to the job in 2012, Eric Holder, who was then Obama's attorney general and previously the deputy attorney general under President Bill Clinton, gutted the IG Act provision that mandates their access to all necessary documents. So you've got President Obama appointing Horowitz and then Holder going in behind him and removing all of the teeth that enable him to get information so that he can properly oversee the executive branch. Does that not stink to high heaven to you? Well, hold your nose because there's more. Then you've got Holder, who would subsequently be held in contempt of Congress for refusing to turn over subpoenaed documents in the Fast and Furious scandal, forced Horowitz to request in writing any documents he sought from the Bureau. Right? So who was in the Bureau at that point? Well, it was then FBI Director Robert Mueller, the same man who's investigating President Trump for collusion. Okay, so a little bit more here. You've got 3 years of back and forth, struggling in Congress, in front of the media, culminating in Obama having no choice but to sign the IG Empowerment Act of 2016, which then removed all doubt about the IG's access to said requested documents. So during the 3 years between Holder's blatant subversion of the 78 Inspector General's Act and the passage of the 2016 law under Obama, James Comey succeeded FBI Director Mueller. He takes over the FBI at that point. He continued, this is Comey now, while he's in charge of the FBI, but he continues to wall off IG Inspector Horowitz's access to documents essential to doing his job until the new law was passed. Yeah. So this really, all of this talk about Donald Trump colluding, all this talk, we're going to hear some audio from Maxine Waters in hour 2 about how all Democrats want the president impeached. Sure, 70% of the Democrats want the president impeached, because if we're doing impeachment hearings, we're not talking about this. We're not talking about the malfeasance of the Obama administration or what has really gone wrong in our government. All right, when we get back, we have Carmine, Sabia. That's going to be fantastic. Just stay there. Stacey on the right.
Nearly 1 in 4 pregnancies in America will end in abortion. The Ministry of Preborn provides free ultrasounds for abortion-minded women throughout America. When a mother sees her baby on an ultrasound and hears the baby's heartbeat, she's 80% more likely to keep her baby.
They introduced me to my child for the first time through an ultrasound. I was able to see this life growing inside of me, hear the heartbeat, and nothing else mattered at that point. I wasn't afraid anymore. I got to meet my child for the first time, and it changed everything. I was a mother to be.
Your gift of $140 will cover the cost of 5 ultrasounds. All donations are tax deductible, and 100% of your gift goes to saving babies. To donate, dial pound 250 and say the keyword baby, or donate securely at preborn.com. Your love can save a life.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson.
When Chick-fil-A opened its 4th location in New York City, not everyone was pleased. The New Yorker magazine described the spread of the chicken restaurant as an infiltration because of its pervasive Christian traditionalism. I suppose we shouldn't be surprised, since the New York mayor proposed a boycott when the first standalone location opened 3 years ago. The newest store probably bothers New Yorkers even more because it's a huge 12,000 square foot restaurant. In case you're wondering, Chick-fil-A is not going away, even if some wish it would fade into the sunset. It is set to become the third largest fast food chain behind McDonald's and Starbucks and had a $9 billion worth in revenue last year. When you ask opponents why they dislike Chick-fil-A, they either point to the company's mission statement, to glorify God, or to a 2012 interview with CEO Dan Cathy about traditional marriage and LGBT issues. Secularists don't like Christian companies. Gay rights activists don't like companies that don't support homosexual issues. Of course, there are other companies and organizations that have the same views and values as Chick-fil-A, but they don't seem to be targeted as much as this chicken sandwich company. Many of these other Christian groups are much more political and lobby for legislation and support various candidates. Nevertheless, Chick-fil-A seems to be the one company that always has a target on its back. Part of the reason may be the success of Chick-fil-A, as well as the numerous ads and billboards that might make some New Yorkers feel it is an infiltration. I would remind New Yorkers that many of us, and the rest of the country, are bombarded by ads about products and services by companies with values often hostile to Christian beliefs. They should adopt our philosophy of live and let live. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
Take Kirby and the Point of View team with you on the go with the Point of View app. Search for Point of View Radio at the Apple or Google Play stores.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on Urban Family Talk.
Welcome back to the program, everybody. Stacy Washington, host of Stacy on the Right. So glad to be with you. I'm looking at the phone lines, and I know we have someone who's called in who wants to chat, and I want to ask you to call back in the third segment. That way we have a chance to actually talk to you because we have a guest who's up next and already waiting on the line. It's Carmine Sabia Jr., Christian conservative political pundit, radio host, and editor. Thank you so much for joining the show today.
How are you, Stacy?
Doing well. We're talking current events, which we can't we'll have to run through and gallop through all of the different news because there's so much news right now. But one of the things that's really been roiling the news cycle since last night is obviously the White House Correspondents' Dinner, where we saw flagrant abuse of the right to tell jokes. But I'm not sure if we heard any jokes last night, but we definitely saw abuses.
I spent most of my time watching the president, but I did catch the segment in question, obviously, because in this business you have to watch it, right? So it wasn't, I have the argument, people arguing with me on social media and saying the same thing. Well, it's entertainment and it's the First Amendment, and it was a roast. First of all, it's not a roast. It's supposed to be lighthearted jabs, It's not an actual, Comedy Central roast like people are trying to portray that it's supposed to be. And even if you went that route, it was just as vicious and personal, and there wasn't actually any joke in there. It was just an attack.
It was pretty rough, and I think the thing that really made it difficult to believe it was happening, because I didn't watch it live. What I did was we went out, me and my family, we went out to celebrate, again, our son's 17th birthday, and we were getting back from there, and I noticed my Twitter feed was just blowing up, and I said, oh, wow, I wondered what's going on. I look and there's all this, there's link after link of what she said. So I click through to the link and I start listening. And my first instinct, your instinct is to just cut it off, just hit it and cut it off. But I didn't, because I figured this must be something. And after every so-called joke, I'm thinking, wow, that was terrible. But I guess she was like, hold my beer, there's more. And she kept on going, just digging herself deeper and deeper. And then when she turned to Sarah Sanders and addressed her, I thought, oh no. And it was exactly what I expected. Without President Trump being there, because they really want to say mean things to him, they simply changed their target and made it Kellyanne Conway and of course, Sarah Sanders, which I mean, I would find it hard, and I'm pretty tough to say that kind of stuff to someone's face. I would really not be able to do that. And they just thought it was great.
I think the interesting thing about that is, besides the obvious, these are the same people that always talk about the war on women. even besides that, they're the people that anytime President Trump tweets something that could be considered mean to a dictator or something, they're all up in arms. Oh, that's unpresidential. How could you say? And these are the most vicious, vile human beings on the planet. When you look at liberals, I don't watch Stephen Colbert. I do occasionally catch Saturday Night Live. You know, you take it even to Baldwin's portrayal of the president on Saturday Night Live. There's no comedy in that. It's just vile hatred. And you feel that coming off him. So you've seen every other president portrayed on Saturday Night Live, and it's always, you know, ha, 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 and the president can laugh along with it, too. This is just brutal hatred, and it comes through, and you could see it in Wolf's performance on Saturday. It was the same thing. It's just, there was no comedy to it. It's just hatred from the depths of their soul. They have not gotten over the election, and you have to kind of feel for them because they're going through this delusion in their mind. I guess they don't have the coping skills. Because don't forget, you know, a lot of these younger people that are doing these jokes, you know, besides like a Baldwin, but a lot of these younger people, they come from a generation where everybody gets a trophy. They're not used to losing. They don't know how to handle that. And this temper tantrum that's been going on since Election Day, it's so childish and mean-spirited. It's hard to find the words to describe it. It's just horrible how they're treating people. It makes me very sad. It really does.
Yeah, I agree. And I think one of the things we have to really look at, if we can, is just you mentioned that you feel sorry for them. I do too, except they're kind of on a destructive path that's really, it's subverting the rule or the will of the people. Elections have consequences, as President Obama said. And so when you lose, you have to watch the agenda of the opposition be enacted. And that's what we're trying to do. The same thing that President Obama did when he rammed through Obamacare and did all the stuff that he did, the DACA, all of that. These are things that are now going to happen. They're actually saying to the rest of America, no, they won't. We won't allow you to implement your agenda. We won't allow you to appoint your staff to fill out your cabinet, to stand up your government. We won't allow it. And we've got to have some kind of option for shutting this thing down. So now I want to pivot over to news out of Washington. Well, it's really out of the Middle East. Bibi Netanyahu took the podium today to make some pretty stunning revelations about some surveillance they've done in Iran and what Iran is doing with the nuclear program. And all of this comes as a developing story with a deadline approaching where the president has to say whether or not he's going to stay in the Iran nuclear deal. And the Iranians tweeting out that they're fine with letting it go. They don't care.
Yeah. Well, the Iranians don't care about the deal because they're not obeying the deal. So what do they care? It's hard to put the genie back in the bottle is the problem. How do you get the other nations on board to re-implement the sanctions? It's not a very easy thing to do. People talk about it, like, well, let's put the sanctions back on. It doesn't work that way. It's going to be very hard to do. And you have to look at, and I think this is what President Trump was saying about if you listen to Bolton over the weekend on Fox News, what they were saying about, you know, the mistakes that the Obama administration made with the Iran deal, we can't do with North Korea. We can't get a deal at any cost. And that's what happened. And you have to either, it's one of two things with the Obama administration here, which is they were either complicit in knowing that Iran was not going to, you know, stick to the terms of the deal, or they were grossly incompetent. It's one of those two things. You can't. It's one or the other. There's no way out of that. They were either grossly incompetent or they knew, and I don't think they knew. So I'm going to go with grossly incompetent. I'll tell you what's lost in a lot of this is how amazing is that Israeli intelligence that they penetrated that deep to get what they got. I mean, it was unbelievable. The detail and the documentation he had, incontrovertible. It's a scary time. You're not going to stop Iran from building this nuclear weapon. We had them on the brink of bankruptcy. We had them on the verge of collapse. This deal, President Obama's nuclear deal, saved their lives. It saved their country. And this is his legacy now. If they get the bomb, that's on him. That's his legacy. And right now, I can't really think of what are our options from this point? Yeah, we're going to end the deal. There's no doubt President Trump's going to end this deal. I mean, anybody could see that. But what are the options from there? How do you stop them from getting a bomb? What are the next steps?
I'm so supremely disappointed that more Americans, especially Democrats, aren't ashamed of this part of the legacy of President Obama, that they never felt like they needed to hold him accountable the way we conservatives feel like, we have to have. Look, there's certain things that we want President Trump to do, like repeal Obamacare, defund Planned Parenthood, and we want him to do those things because if he doesn't, his legacy will be marred by not accomplishing those. And so it seems like on the opposing side for the Democrats, they would have, at some point, someone would have said, pump the brakes for a second. We support this guy, but the reason we don't want you to fail in the Middle East, the reason we don't want you cozying up to Iran and signing a deal that lets them do things that harm our country is because then that gets pinned on Democrats, it gets pinned on you, and it destroys the good work that we're trying to do. But the Democrats don't seem to have the ability to actually say something like that about these major goings on in the foreign policy arena.
It's kind of interesting because they call us a cult, but we're the first ones to call out President Trump if he's doing something we don't like.
Yeah.
We're the first ones to tell him how we felt about the omnibus.
Yes.
And, we will do that. We're not a cult. I mean, there are some cultists. I'm not going to lie. There are some cultists. But no, what the Democrats have when they have a president in office, they will defend them from anything. Look at it. It wasn't just President Obama. I mean, look how they defended President Bill Clinton, and now they're the Me Too movement. Where were you then, Me Too? So it's a totally different thing. They're going to try. I mean, I was watching CNN a little bit today while I was writing and editing, and I'm listening to them try and kind of spin it to not make it President Obama's fault. And it's just, you have to really suspend disbelief to get into the heads of CNN anchors who really spend their day trying to, A, make President Trump look bad, and B, save President Obama's legacy. You were mentioning before about, stopping the agenda and all that. And the difference when Republicans complained for 8 years about President Obama, first of all, it wasn't our life 24/7. It wasn't what we talked about at every party, at every family gathering, every minute of every day. But the second thing is we didn't have activist judges helping us thwart him. We didn't have activists that were helping him in the government actually helping stop his agenda. Our Republicans said, hey, he won the election. We're going to let him have his cabinet. We're going to let him have, what I mean? We didn't try and obstruct. It's not the same thing.
Yeah, I agree with you. So then I guess the other big story, obviously, that is still running along, kind of underground. Obviously, the White House Correspondents' Dinner has been, or the National, the White House Correspondents' Dinner, WHDC. That's been a big story. But you've also still got Jim Comey out there pumping the book and talking about how the leaks he did weren't actual leaks. And we've had a few people call in, like some expert listeners calling in, talking about their experience on active duty and how important it was that the classified silo remains, even when you're no longer on active duty and you're a private citizen, which seems to be a part of the defense of Comey. I don't know if you caught the interviews of him last week, over and over again, repeatedly saying that it's not a leak for him because he's a private citizen and it wasn't classified. And I don't think that stuff holds water. Like, that's not even a tin cup or a plastic cup or one of those cheap red Solo cups. It's just not holding it.
It's a ridiculous assertion. I mean, there's still government documents. That'd be like Hillary Clinton, saying, well, now I can release all the private information I had as Secretary of State when I was in office. I mean, if that was the case, we would have chaos every time a new administration came in.
Right.
All the secrets would be up for grabs. Well, I'm not in office anymore, so here's everything we got. I mean, it's laughable. It's laughable, and it's worse that these people in the media are giving it credence like it's a real defense. It's minor. And then you have Americans, because they don't, I mean, most Americans, most 9 to 5 everyday Americans, this isn't their life. If the news media says that's a legitimate defense, they believe that. Well, okay, that sounds reasonable. It's not reasonable. It's insane. Could you imagine if Dr. Gorka did that after he left the White House? Well, here's everything I know.
Right. I'm not an employee anymore. I'm a private citizen. And here's what I learned.
Could you imagine? Could you imagine?
Well, I can imagine that if he did that, since he's a Republican, he would immediately be in cuffs. Anybody who's a Republican is in danger.
They would arrest him.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, I never want anybody to be arrested or anything, but I do want there to be the rule of law so that there's a deterrent, because there's a dangerous precedent that gets set here, right, Carmine? You get people who work for the government who, if they're Democrats, they know they can later go out and leak. And if that happens, then these people know, well, I'm just going to go work for the government and get a nice security clearance. I'm going to learn everything I can. And then anything I'm interested in letting out when I'm a private citizen, I will. I won't be prosecuted. That's not the government we want.
It's interesting to me because even when Republicans are in power, Democrats seem impervious to this stuff. It's hard to understand because, like you said, and I was talking to somebody about this today, and we were talking about a different situation. But what I said was, you have to understand there's two completely different sets of rules. We know that even as conservatives just posting, even if you just go to social media, what a Democrat, what a liberal could post on Facebook or Twitter versus what we could say, completely different. And that stretches into the government. It stretches into the justice system. There's obviously two sets of rules, and I'm with you. I don't subscribe to the lock him up, lock her up, let's lock up our political opponents thing, because that sets a dangerous precedent too. We're not a banana republic. But when there's laws clearly violated, there has to be repercussions. As far as I'm concerned, Jim Comey is a criminal. He broke the law. And here's the thing. 2 years ago, let's just say 2 years ago, when Jim Comey was in office, he would put you in jail for doing what he just did.
Yes, he would. And wouldn't think twice about it.
First one. And Mueller would have too. So come on.
He would refer you to the Department of Justice for prosecution for doing exactly what he did. And he wouldn't care if you did it.
He knows what he did.
Yeah.
He knows what he did. He knows he's lying. That's the frustrating part. He knows he's lying. But you see him go on The View, and then they're sitting there like it's a hard-hitting interview. Oh, yeah, Jim, that might make sense. Yeah, call me. And what's more about Stormy Daniels, The only hard interview they had was Brett Baer, and he saved that for last.
Yeah, I think one of the things that comes out of this, no matter how you swing it, is Jim Comey. He feels like he's rehabilitating his image with the left, and he's made this declaration that his wife and all of his daughters voted for Hillary, and he thinks he's patching things up. But they'll never forgive him because they blame him in part for losing Hillary the election, and they'll never forgive him for that. And so, yeah, he's never going to get past that. I don't care how many books he writes or how much he says he used to be a Republican. Carmine, thank you so much for coming on.
Trying to find himself for maybe Democrat, running as a Democrat for office, but I was saying the same thing to somebody the other day. We were having a conversation. I said that they're never going to forgive him.
No, they're not.
They want him to help take down this president, but they will never forgive him for what he did to Clinton. Never,
never, ever. Thank you so much for coming on today, Carmine. And we'll talk to you again soon. All right. Thanks so much. Carmine Sabia, so Christian conservative political pundit, radio host, and editor. We'll be back with more right after these messages.
A dear sister in the Lord, who is a writer for the AFA Journal, wrote an astonishing article about idols. In this article, she attests to the fact that if we are truly honest with ourselves, we will find things or people whom are more important in our lives than our relationship with God. Let's just say when I read this, I did my own soul searching and found a few. There are several passages in God's word where he tells us to not idolize things or people. Even the very first 2 commandments warns us about idolatry. In 1 John chapter 5, verse 21, John tells us to keep ourselves from idols. Idolatry is sin, and it could be your career, your marriage, your car, including yourself. John Piper says it best. Sin is what you do when your heart is not satisfied with God. How do you get satisfied and excited about God? Refresh your memory of what the Savior of the world did on the cross and ask the Lord to help you make him number one in your life. With a heart for the urban family, I'm today's urban woman, Victory McIntosh. Connect with us more at urbanfamilytalk.com.
Abraham Hamilton III.
God put us in this world at this time to be salt and light. We don't fold because of the darkness that we're facing. This is not the first time in the world's history that it's gotten dark. God has called you and I to be his ambassadors, even in this dark moment.
Tune in to the Hamilton Quarter, Weekdays at 5 p.m. Central on Urban Family Talk.
Is God calling you to pursue theological graduate education? What's keeping you from taking the first step? Is it time? What if you could choose from flexible class options? Is it money? What if competitively priced seminary offered academic scholarships? Do you think you're alone? What if your classmates were just like you, balancing careers and families with seminary? Hello, I'm Dr. John Nyhoff, president of Wesley Biblical Seminary in Jackson, Mississippi. Take the first step. Visit wbs.edu.
Part of growing in Christ is learning how to encourage others. In doing so, you always gain strength for your own journey. It's kind of like you can't pray for someone in earnest and remain angry at them. You may not like what they've done, but the presence of God has a way of sifting the wrath right out of you. You can't encourage someone else in your walk and remain numb to the encouraging words yourself. As you encourage others, you begin to see that all things are possible in Christ Jesus. Your obstacles become visibly obtainable. In this world of self-centeredness and all about me, be extraordinary. Don't be the norm. Each day, stop and take a me poll to determine just where you are in your walk with the Lord. Encourage your brother or sister in the Lord in that area and watch God do some amazing things in your life. Your deliverance is resting in the power of your tongue. With a heart for the urban family, I'm today's urban woman, Tony Johnson. Connect with us at urbanfamilytalk.com.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right.
This week's historic summit between the leaders of North and South Korea has set the stage for a face-to-face meeting between President Trump and Kim Jong-un. It will be the first time the leaders of the U.S. and North Korea have ever met, and central to the agenda, trying to get Kim to abandon his nuclear weapons program. Joining us now, John Bolton, in his first Sunday Show interview as the president's national security advisor. Ambassador, welcome back to Fox News Sunday.
Glad to be here.
Let's start with the Trump-Kim summit. Is it going to happen? When and where?
Well, I think it is going to happen. The dates and the places are still under discussion. I think the president is eager to do it as soon as possible, but we still need to work out the precise parameters.
Well, you say eager to do it as soon as possible. Is the U.S. side ready to sit down and talk?
We will be when we do sit down. I think it's something that the president has thought a good deal about already, and I think people around the world have already given him credit for establishing the preconditions for this to happen in the first place. President Moon of South Korea, for example, has been very clear that but for the pressure, the economic pressure, the politico-military pressure that President Trump has put on North Korea, we would not be where we are today.
So that's Ambassador, well, he was Ambassador, and now he's National Security Advisor John Bolton. And he's talking about how, giving some details to Chris Wallace about what's going on with North Korea. And so this is a multifaceted process. It's just beginning. This is not something that's going to be resolved in the next week or so. It's not like setting up lunch with someone where you just have to coalesce the schedules and then you can meet, decide on a place, decide on a time, get together and meet. This is going to take a lot more than what we're seeing. And there's been a lot of maneuvering behind the scenes. And I think what's interesting about this is that when the left takes all of the time out to criticize President Trump on his behavior, namely what I'm thinking about right now, prime in my mind is when this was last year. This was the president dealing with Kim Jong-un via social media, and Kim Jong-un was, you're this, you're that, you're horrible. We're gonna destroy your little country. We're gonna destroy your country. That's what Kim Jong-un was saying. It was like some kind of schoolyard jonesing contest. We'll destroy your country. And then we had them on the show. Remember, we had experts on the program talking about how, yes, we have missile defense. We have a shield that we can use over this country, but it's not foolproof. And so if 60 missiles are coming our way, we're not 100% sure that we can knock down every single one of those. And that was my first time ever learning that. I thought we had the thing, the only thing that you needed to have, which was the thing. I thought we had that thing. Turns out we do. We have a lot of those things. We have a myriad of those so-called things, but each one, of course, they work in concert with each other and none of them are foolproof. So then we learned even more right here on the show. We kind of unpacked all of the attendant possibilities and horrifying realities of North Korea and that wild man. Lots of names hurled at him by President Trump. Meanwhile, President Trump is on Twitter and he's biting back. He's giving as good as he gets. And the leftists were beside themselves, sniffling into their handkerchiefs and clutching their pearls. And literally, he wants us to go to war with North Korea. It's going to be World War III. Now, we did share a little bit of analysis from the Conservative Treehouse and some other places. And my own thought on it was the president's not going to allow this man to get on social media, this dictator of North Korea, and smack him around. He's going to smack back. So you might as well just, if you don't like the sound of it, don't look at it. You don't have to be on Twitter. You don't have to read news stories about the president's tweets. Just let it go, because there's no way he's going to allow the dictator of North Korea to talk trash about America. That's just not his style. Turns out that he actually knew what he was doing. Not only did he push back and create an atmosphere between himself and that dictator that basically said, not only are we not on equal footing, I'm above you. And my country is above yours, and you can threaten all you want, but I'm only going to threaten you back. And when he said he would annihilate their country, do you guys remember this? President Trump said he would destroy their country and everything in it. And that is when the rhetoric died down. Remember? Kim Jong-un stopped tweeting stuff about destroying America, and all of a sudden it was lots of meetings between Kim Jong-un and the leader of China. All of a sudden, he was going back and forth too, because the Chinese government keeps North Korea afloat. They don't make enough. They can't feed their own citizens. Their currency is not accepted by any other nation in the world. They're not respected. They're not a part of the UN. They just don't have any standing anywhere. So he can tweet all he wants, but he can't do anything except continue to advance his nuclear program by dealing with other bad actors in the world. So then you fast forward to this year. While President Trump is kicking up snuff in other news areas, he sent Mike Pompeo over to North Korea on Easter to have a meeting with this guy. I mean, this is the behind the scenes, art of the deal type stuff that all of us conservatives are like, yes, come on, let me see more of that. And all the liberals are like, wait, he did what? We're not confirming Mike Pompeo, except all of the Americans who have any sense, all of the Americans who are maybe not political at all or have an interest in our foreign policy, all sat up from their grits, oatmeal, cereal, eggs, bacon, pancakes, or just plain coffee, grapefruit juice, whatever your breakfast deal is. Everybody just kind of sat up for a second and said, so while we were all doing Easter, he sent Mike Pompeo to meet with Kim Jong-un? So obviously we're going to confirm Mike Pompeo is going to get confirmed because he's already taken the meeting. And that's the guy you want to continue to take the meetings. You don't start that relationship and then start switching people out. So the genius was right there for all of us to look at. And I know, for one, I was absolutely pleased to find out that they'd done that they'd already started the ball to rolling. Instead of playing the entire thing out in the media and letting people who don't care about this country, like those folks over at certain news organizations who rather take glee in any time that we're not doing well, because that gives them a chance to blame Donald Trump. Instead, he's not waiting for them to have a comment on it. He's going around behind the scenes making something happen with this dictator. Now, we've got Michael Bolton a little bit more. Michael Bolton's a singer. This is John Bolton. John Bolton. We have a little bit more audio from him where he's talking about, there's more to this. And obviously there are more steps to the process. And we can't trust that anything's going to happen. Like, they're saying they want to denuclearize and they want to destroy their sites and stop testing. And this is a radical departure. And they're already moving forward with peacemaking activities between the North Koreans and the South Koreans. Like today, they showed video of the South Koreans dismantling their wide access. It's like a sound system where they blare what's called propaganda by the North Koreans, but they blare the truth about how it is in South Korea and how they really want to have one nation again and how Kim Jong-un is really not taking care of them or telling them the truth. They're now dismantling those because there are certain steps that they want to undergo so that they can be together again. And we're going to get back to that White House Correspondents' Dinner and some comments I have on that. And we're also going to talk about Joy Reid, and we'll be doing that in hour 2. But first, let's listen to John Bolton, too. So you've got John Bolton, and he's still in the same interview talking about, the dynamics between North Korea and the United States going forward.
I think that the maximum pressure campaign that the Trump administration has put on North Korea has, along with the political military pressure, has brought us to this point. I mentioned President Moon before. Just this past week, President Macron of France, Chancellor Merkel of Germany, Prime Minister Abe of Japan. The week before that, this morning, Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull of Australia have all acknowledged we are at this point because of American pressure. Relieving that pressure isn't going to make negotiation easier. It could make it harder.
So the sanctions were working, and so much to do, right? This is like a huge event that someone's putting on, and all of the moving parts have to be orchestrated in such a way as to not derail the process. And so what we're going to see happening is obviously behind the scenes stuff we won't see happening, but in before everything, you're going to have NSA John Bolton. He's going to be coming out and he's going to be, making periodic updates. But we have to understand that just as been demonstrated, this has been demonstrated right now. We have seen now that the president has the ability to maneuver things behind the scenes to create an atmosphere in which he can have success on these foreign policy initiatives. The reason why it doesn't seem to work so much on domestic policy is because there are these leakers embedded within the government who continually put stuff out there to try to undermine him. I don't know how he pulled it off, how he was able to get it done without any leakers destroying the secrecy of the meeting and all of that. But whatever it was, I hope it was instructive in how he can possibly transfer that same type of activity over to the domestic side and maybe get a few things done for us there. I also want to point you over to nationalcenter.org. We are preparing to roll out our multi-point plan called The Blueprint, a better deal for Black America, where we've now taken the meeting at the White House, which I attended, and then my two co-chairs, the two gentlemen who work with me, Horace Cooper and Counsel Ned, they've both taken a meeting with Mitch McConnell, which I was sad to miss that, but the boy comes first. We only have the one son, and I was not going to miss his birthday. And then also some members of the Agricultural Committee met with people from Project 21 and National Center. And so we're going to be sharing that. And it's just, it's exciting. I'm really excited about what we're going to be able to do with that. So, keep your eyes peeled. We'll be sharing more of that here on the program and also on all of the different websites. So I want to also give you guys one more quick thing. Don't forget urbanfamilytalk.com, the Marriage and Family Conference. That's coming up. Registration at the discounted rate ends today. The price goes up a smidge tomorrow. You'll still be able to register. So you might want to get in today if you want the discounted rate. So let's circle back around to the 3 scary FBI scandal factors that you must know. And we talked during the first segment about Horowitz's revenge and how his ability to oversee the executive branch was greatly reduced in its scope and power by Eric Holder and the Obama administration. And President Obama was forced to, before he left office, reinstate the power of the Inspector General. But the damage had already been done. Then you have James Comey taking over the FBI. So then Horowitz has been investigating the FBI's conduct in its investigation of former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton's use of the private email server. You guys remember that? And using her private email system to conduct official business as America's head diplomat. So as an aside, let's put a pin right there. And let me say to you, if you're listening to the show and you're like, I'm tired of hearing about Hillary's emails. Well, this is what happens when someone gets away with murder, or in this case, gets away with flouting the law on maintaining the classification of, documents. It doesn't go away. So for people who are, if you're tired of hearing about it, yeah. And I was tired of talking about Fast and Furious. I was tired of talking about Benghazi, but people got away with murder in those cases. In this case, we're talking about this email scandal. No one was killed, but agents' whereabouts and their covers were compromised. Things happened because of this. So Horowitz is also probing the Bureau's investigation of allegations of collusion between Donald Trump's 2016 campaign and elements linked to the Russian government. So That's still going on. In the course of those 2 investigations, Horowitz has obtained and reviewed an estimated 1.2 million documents. There's an old saying in Washington that things that go around have a way of coming back around. Uh-oh. So now, number 2, there's Obama's prerogative. As more facts are uncovered about the lengths to which former FBI Director Comey and Andrew McCabe and a half a dozen other pro-Hillary Clinton bureau insiders went to protect the Democratic nominee, the least discussed element has been President Obama's role in the affair. Now, you guys are well informed because if you've been listening, you know we talked about the fact that President Obama knew she was using the email server because he knew what her email address was because he was emailing her under a pseudonym. Now, the only reason he would want to email her under a pseudonym is to protect his executive email account from being compromised by communicating with hers. Only reason. I mean, we don't need anybody who's like an email client worker or anything like that to tell us that. That's pretty easy. He was trying to wall off his culpability in what she was doing. Now, former Attorney General Michael Mukasey and former U.S. Attorney Andrew McCarthy make persuasive cases that protecting Obama and the Clinton email scandal was key to the FBI's clearly bungled investigation. They had to protect her because they weren't really protecting her. Their key target for protection was President Obama. So we'll get into the rest of this in hour 2. We'll also have guests, fantastic guests. We have Dr. Sebastian Gorka of Fox News. He's also the author of Defeating Jihad. He's going to be here. And then we have Cassie Smedile. She's the RNC National Press Secretary. So you stay there. We'll be right back with more after these important messages from One News Now.
The sexual revolution has falsely promised to satisfy the human heart.
God has a better way if we follow God's prescription.
Dr. Michael Brown offers hope for those trapped in the downward spiral of sexual immorality. The Freedom of Sexual Purity is a powerful DVD from the AFA Cultural Institute. Get your copy today at afastore.net.
Truth, wisdom, empowerment. Urban Family Talk, a ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, almost DPU. Israel says Iran has violated the terms of the nuclear deal it agreed to, and there is now proof that the nation is indeed developing nuclear weapons. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he now has proof taken from the Iranians that they are indeed working on nuclear weapons. Iranian officials have denied that, but Netanyahu says
Iran lied big time. After signing the nuclear deal in 2015, Iran intensified its efforts to hide its secret nuclear files.
Netanyahu says Iran has kept its nuclear weapons files at a top-secret location, which Israel has now found.
A few weeks ago, in a great intelligence achievement, Israel obtained half a ton of the material inside these vaults. And here's what we got. 55,000 pages, another 55,000 files on 183 CDs. Everything you're about to see is an exact copy of the original Iranian material. You may want to know where are the originals? Well, I can say they're now in a very safe place.
The White House Correspondents Association distanced itself late Sunday from comedian Michelle Wolf after her so-called comedy routine on Saturday that some found vulgar and personal. The backlash against the Correspondents' Dinner was prompted over Wolf's profanity-laced routine that targeted White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders. Fox News Chief National Correspondent Ed Henry says the statement from the White House Correspondents Association falls short.
It's not enough. It's simply not enough to say this is not in keeping with the spirit of the dinner. Let's call it what it was. We invited Sarah Sanders to sit on the dais. We invited her to dinner, and we treated her rudely, crudely, disrespectfully. It was disgusting. It was vile. Enough is enough. And we played right into President Trump's hands, and, you know, where he can now say this is fake news and you guys are disrespectful and don't understand the heartland of the country. And guess what? After that routine, we do not understand.
The chaplain of the House of Representatives resigned or was fired last week. Steve Jordahl reports the details are a little fuzzy, but the politics that followed was crystal clear.
Speaker Paul Ryan reportedly fired Chaplain Pat Conroy because of this prayer offered in the midst of debate over the GOP tax bill.
May their efforts these days guarantee that there are not winners and losers under new tax laws, but benefits balanced and shared by all Americans.
To date, Ryan has not clarified why he let the chaplain go, but it didn't stop Democrat Joseph Crowley from taking to the floor and offering a pointed and political resolution to establish a select committee to investigate the issue.
Whereas on November 6, 2017, during debate on the GOP tax scam, whereas under the GOP tax bill, more than 80% of its benefits flow to the richest 1% and the corporate special interests.
The resolution died when it was denied a vote. Dr. Robert Jeffress of First Baptist Dallas says to him, Conroy's prayer was not out of line.
When people pray, especially in the House, and I have prayed there before, they can't help but bring their own viewpoint, especially if they think it's a moral viewpoint.
He's waiting for the whole story to come out before passing judgment.
I would think that would be an extreme reaction to such a prayer. That's why I have to wonder if there's not more to it than that.
I'm Steve Jordahl.
And investigators are warning parents about unsolicited packages being sent to their young children.
2 packages delivered to a Phoenix City, Alabama elementary school intended for 2 young girls included letters signed by an Otter Buck of Santa Fe, New Mexico, and included 2 email addresses for which the sender asks the intended girls to contact him. The FBI says those email addresses match IP addresses in Houston, of which they've been investigating, where someone posts disturbing messages about young girls and about visiting pen pals in Phoenix City. More packages ordered to be delivered to minor-age girls in South Carolina and Virginia have also been discovered. Parents are warned to keep their eyes on what their kids are doing online. Eben Brown, Fox News.
For American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh.
God allows crises in our lives to reveal God in a way you have never seen him before.
Dr. Tony Evans talks about the upside to down times.
When God shakes things up, it's because he's doing something new.
A look at what it takes to find the deliverance you need to make a spiritual comeback. This week on The Alternative with Dr. Tony Evans.
Welcome to Stacy on the Right with your host, Stacy Washington.
Welcome back to the program, everybody. Thank you so much for being with us. UrbanFamilyTalk.com is where you can register for the conference, and StacyOnTheRight.com is where you can subscribe to my blog so you don't miss anything. Like my visit last week to the White House to speak with staffers about the blueprint, A Better Deal for Black America. So excited about that. Can't wait to share more with you. But right now, it's my pleasure to welcome Dr. Sebastian Gorka. He's a Fox News national security strategist and former strategist to President Trump. He's the author of the New York Times bestseller, Defeating Jihad, and his new book, Why We Fight, is on Amazon and in bookstores and retailers across the country. I'll put the link in all of the show feeds that we have going on YouTube and Periscope and the 2 Facebook pages. And I'm asking you guys to welcome our next guest. Hey, Dr. Sebastian Gorka, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you so much for having me. The new book isn't out yet. You can order it on Amazon, but it comes out in July.
July. Okay. So this is pre-order time, which is really important because it can kind of propel the book forward. And I'm putting the link to the pre-order site up there for you guys. I want you to take a look. And I love when we have someone on who's an expert who's also written a book, because that gives us something for our summer reading. So I want to talk to you about a couple of things, but I want to start off with the White House Correspondents' Dinner. It was such a frightful display of unbridled hatred, but I want to get your take on it.
It's really quite stunning, really, because it just demonstrates how not only are the media totally isolated from the average American, they haven't learned how isolated they are in the last 2 years, and they're doubling down. There was hatred, it was vitriol, people are looking at what was said about Sarah Huckabee Sanders, but you need to watch the whole thing or read the transcript about what this woman said about Vice President Pence, who's, in my opinion, my experience, perhaps the most honorable politician in America, and what she said about abortion. It was really disgusting, and it just symbolizes a doubling down by the elite, and they're making themselves even more irrelevant than they already are.
And so, you're talking about the doubling down. In some ways, although I can't reconcile the site, obviously there were a lot of really crass, horrifying jokes that she tried to foist off on her audience. The abortion joke, the discussion about Kellyanne Conway, horrible statements. But I really can't reconcile the way she spoke about Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who was literally just within arm's reach of her and had to sit and up on the dais. This is not a place where you storm off. You're basically a captive audience. And I've met Sarah Huckabee Sanders before. She's just one of the kindest people you're ever going to meet. I've also met her father. Again, just a really genuine, wonderful person. But this plays into their hands in that they say, we hate Donald Trump. We want to get rid of him. We want to elect Democrats in the fall so that we can impeach him. But what they did last night was cement in the minds of 60 some odd million Americans that they got to turn out in 2018 to prevent these people from coming back to power.
No, I absolutely agree. This performance just was absolutely golden for the president and for the Make America Great Again agenda in November. This is exactly why Donald Trump won, and the way they treated this woman. What I'd like to see now, and this is so very telling, is where are all the feminists? Where are all the women who stand up for women allegedly, and the proponents of the Me Too movement and everything else? Do only left-wing women get protected by the feminists? This shows you that if the left didn't have double standards, they wouldn't have any standard at all.
I sure wouldn't. And you're making a point that I hadn't even gotten to. There's so much, this is 29 minutes of the most awful, it wasn't even funny. And she didn't memorize any of it. So she had to read the content. It was just
funny.
Terrible.
It wasn't funny.
Yeah. You made up the point you just brought up just now that feminists are not coming to defense of Sarah Huckabee Sanders. And I took the time, and I feel like I burned brain cells and my corneas, need repair afterwards. But I went on Twitter and I spent a full 15 minutes reading the responses from liberals to the sharing and some of the statements by Maggie Haberman of the New York Times and others who came out and said, look, this wasn't okay. And the liberals within those threads, these are regular people, admittedly, but Dr. G, they were in there kind of gloating and saying she deserved it because she's a liar. Well, everyone thinks the press secretary for the president they don't support is a liar. I thought the two press secretaries for President Obama were regular liars back when they were press secretaries. Now they feel the same way about Sarah Huckabee Sanders. But does that mean I get to attack the looks of the previous press secretaries just because I don't agree with what they've said?
Well, unfortunately, I did exactly the same thing you did, and it's really shocking. I mean, you're used to avatars where people hide their face, they don't have their real name, and then they're just disgusting on Twitter. But yesterday, I saw American women with their own name there, congratulating this woman for attacking another woman. It was so strange, and it just reinforces one thing for me: that the left's fuel is hatred. We on the right, our fuel is love for our nation, love for the founding principles of our republic. And the left is just this bile-ridden, hate-filled monstrosity. And when people applaud and egg on women who are attacking other women simply because they politically disagree with them, look, this is all they have, and they're welcome to it.
It is. And it really, it doesn't serve us well, but I mean, in some ways it does. Obviously, the midterms are coming, and I hope that they're going to save some audio from that over at the RNC and use it to pummel these people because they really don't care about women. They don't. So, Dr. Gorka, can we move over to this huge announcement today? And you have this expertise in foreign policy, and I'm dying to get what you feel is actually happening here with you've got Bibi Netanyahu of Israel coming out with this explosive sharing of their they've investigated, they've gone behind the scenes, they've somehow been able to get their hands on original documents showing that Iran is not even close to complying with the so-called legacy agreement that was created by between Iran and President Obama. What's going on here?
Just an absolute masterstroke. If you go back and watch the video, this is half a ton of intelligence, more than 100,000 documents that Israel managed to acquire from Iran, and they've shared elements of it already with their allies. This is proof positive that everything that was promised to us by the Obama administration under the JCPOA-Iran deal is a sham. Iran had no intention of doing peaceful research. It has been demonstrated that they now have covert facilities for the research and manufacturing of nuclear devices as weapons of war. And it's I think, the final straw that's going to guarantee that the president is going to kill the Iran deal when the deadline comes up later in May.
And so they're going to be, it's not going to impact them because they've already tweeted out that they don't care if we end the deal. So now what? After the president, I agree with you. That's what it looks like it's going to happen. President Trump's going to say, forget this thing. I've not liked it from the beginning. You're not abiding by it. It's over. Then what?
Well, then we redouble our efforts to put pressure on Iran. Then we sit down with our allies who, unfortunately, are vested in maintaining the JCPOA-Iran deal, especially Germany and France, because their businesses make a lot of money trading with Tehran, with the mullahs. We go back to the drawing board and we exert far more pressure with renewed sanctions and a renewed mechanism to hurt the regime of this theocratic republic. So, when I was in the White House, the phrase that we use again and again and again from the president is behavior modification. The last administration released $150 billion. The behavior modification did not get better. In fact, it got worse. Well, now we're going to go in the other direction and make sure that they start behaving in ways that do not threaten America and do not threaten our closest allies like Israel.
Well, thank you for that. I'm hopeful that under President Trump's strong leadership, they're going to realize it's a new day. It's the Trump doctrine now, and that they'll start to behave accordingly, or they'll be under threat of action from the president, who he's not afraid to not just make the threats, but to answer them. So for our last couple of minutes, I have to get your take, because you did just mention that you once worked in the White House, and so you had access to classified information under your security clearance, and you also dealt directly with the president, who has the highest security clearance available. And after all of these weeks now, we've been listening to James Comey say that if you have unclassified information, information from conversations you've had with the president of the United States, and you are no longer employed by the government, that then it is your determination whether or not you can share that information with reporters. You're in the exact same position. You used to work for the president in the White House. You had a security clearance, and now you don't. So are you able to share information that you deem as unclassified with reporters or anyone else, or is James Comey pulling our leg?
Any information that I acquired through classified channels by dint of having a security clearance in the White House remains government property and classified. If I divulge any of that, I have committed a felony. James Comey is a liar. Just because he says he's a private citizen doesn't mean that he can talk about these things. That would mean that anybody could be a spy. The day you retire or the day you leave a government contract, you can spill the beans on everything you saw or every piece of information you acquired that was classified and say, well, look, I'm a private citizen now. It's absolute baloney, and James Comey knows it, and he is a liar.
Now, I want to be clear, because I heard what you just said, but what about the stuff he learned that was unclassified, but was still the stuff that was between him and the president of the United States? Because in my mind, all of it's classified, the communications with the president, especially in the private conversations where no one else was present, because the only people to determine the level of classification in a one-on-one conversation would be the one with the highest classification. What about those chats? Are those unclassified because he says they're unclassified?
No, they are privileged government information that forever belongs to the government. James Comey does not get to decide what he can reveal about private meetings with the president that are privileged. The information that he acquires in those meetings, and which he wrote up on government laptops, on government time, every single letter that he typed as a result of those meetings belongs to the U.S. government, and only the U.S. government may release it. Whether it is classified or not, it belongs to the United States government. James Comey has zero, and I mean zero, authority to release any government information as a private citizen.
Okay. I totally believe you, and I appreciate your expertise here. I just wanted to hear it from someone who's in the same boat.
It's not a question of belief. It's a question of federal law.
Exactly. So at this point, and we have to be real, we know people don't always get held accountable for their wrong actions. Do you think he'll be held accountable for this?
Well, right now, if you read the 230 pages of the House Permanent Intelligence Committee report that was released last week on the Russia so-called collusion, the people who are in deep... There's a whole conspiracy involving James Comey because he did illegally leak information that led to the hiring of a special counsel to investigate the president, and he leaked that information to a friend of his. So that's illegal to begin with. But the epicenter of all of this is John Brennan, Obama's director of Central Intelligence, and DNI, the former director of National Intelligence, Clapper, who leaked the information of Comey's briefing to the president to Jake Tapper at the CNN, and subsequently was hired and given a contract with CNN. So all of these people are complicit in felonies, in leaking, in undermining a presidential election. But the epicenter of it all is really John Brennan, who, and your listeners may not believe this, but they can look it up on the internet, who in 1976 voted for the Communist Party candidate for American president. Wow. John Brennan is at the center of this all, followed by Clapper and then Comey.
Unbelievable. Well, head to my Twitter feed at Stacey on the Right or Dr. Gorka's at Seb Gorka to click the link through to pre-order the book. And thank you so much for coming on today. I hope to speak to you soon.
My pleasure, anytime.
All right. Thank you. And we'll be back with more right after these messages. Stay there.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tim Wildman, president of American Family Association and American Family Radio. A couple of months ago, I told you about the Show Up Tour coming up to Washington, D.C. and Mount Vernon in September. And the Show Up Tour means all you got to do is show up to Washington, D.C., and we will take care of the rest. That is the Spiritual Heritage Tour in the fall, and we're almost sold out. You will love this tour if you've never been to our nation's capital. We're going to see it from a distinctively Christian perspective and a historically accurate perspective. Stephen McDowell of the Providence Foundation will be joining us to give talks all along the way. We're also going to Williamsburg, Jamestown, and Yorktown on a separate tour, just preceding the Washington, D.C. tour if you want to do both. So for all the information on the September Show Up Tour, go to spiritualheritagetours.com. That's spiritualheritagetours.com.
Hello, I'm Pastor Joseph Parker, and this is Daily Time in the Word. It's our goal to help you better understand the great blessing of spending time in God's Word every single day. In the book of Hebrews, chapter 4, verse 12 tells us these words, "The Word of God is living and powerful and sharper than any two-edged sword, piercing even to the division of soul and spirit, and of joints and marrow, and is a discerner of the thoughts and intents of the heart. And there's no creature hidden from his sight, but all things are naked and open to the eyes of him to whom we must give account." Again, Hebrews chapter 4, and that was verses 12 and 13. God's Word is powerful. It blesses us. It guides us. It counsels us. It strengthens us. It lifts us up. It's so important that we're getting significantly into the Word of God each and every day. If you're not reading God's Word every day, I want to challenge and encourage you to start that very important habit. And I would specifically encourage you to start reading at least 3 chapters in your Bible each and every day. It'll bless you and encourage you in so many important ways. And to every parent listening, I want to challenge and encourage you to start having your children to read the Word of God. Your young kids read out loud to you each and every day. It will bless them tremendously, and it will minister to their mind, body, and spirit. We all need the Word of God. The Lord Jesus Christ told us, "Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds forth from the mouth of God." Dads and moms, we need the Word. Our children need the Word of God. Everybody needs the Word of God. So I would challenge and encourage you to start today to have your children read at least 3 chapters out loud to you each and every day. Pray with them and let them read the Word to you. It'll bless them and bless you as well. And it's one way to allow the grace of God to pour into your home and the lives of your children in a much greater way. I hope you'll start that habit today.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right.
Hey, welcome back to the program, everybody. What a fantastic interview with Dr. Gorka. It is such a pleasure to speak with him and to have his expertise here. And he makes a good point. It's really not about what we believe or whether or not we find the speaker credible. It's about the law. And the law is very clear about what can be done with information that's owned by the federal government. And so while James Comey may have felt that in his own power he could classify and unclassify information, what is classified and what was unclassified remains to be seen, because as we've heard many times before, it is well within the scope of their ability to classify information afterwards. So they realize we don't actually want that out in the public. That's now classified. And it's classified at that point. His ideas on this really are irrelevant. What he felt when he was laying up in the middle of the night thinking about a special prosecutor, irrelevant. So it's fascinating to hear that from Dr. Gorka. So appreciative of him. And our first guest, which was Carmine Sabia, great guest on the program today, which includes our next guest. We have one of our fan favorites, RNC National Press Secretary, Cassie Smedile. Thank you so much, Cassie, for coming on today.
Stacey, always great to be with you.
Okay, so we usually have really great chats, and I'm sure today will be no different, but the subject matter has had my blood boiling for at least 10 hours now, maybe more, and it has to do with this White House Correspondents' Dinner and watching Sarah Huckabee Sanders sit there, and also Kellyanne Conway, and really just be publicly flogged for the acts of being conservative and, you know, working while conservative, I call it, and a woman.
I think that's a great way to put it. Wasn't it just horrific? And I have to say, first, before saying anything, I have to underscore my praise and really just bow down to Sarah Huckabee Sanders for the way that she graciously sat up there, recognizing that she was first there in the seat of the president, who was out in Washington, Michigan, not in Washington, D.C., and she knew she was taking the high road there. And I just give her all the praise in the world for how she handled herself amidst that horrific ambush. And I'm glad to see that at least some of the folks at the Correspondents Association are asking mea culpa. They're offering their apologies, saying this is not how this was meant to be. But I would say that this was a long time coming. They'd been toting the line or teetering on the line for quite some time. And to see this woman just so disgustingly over the line on Saturday was just, it's everything that we hate about Washington elites and the liberal media, just on display. And it was just really disgusting is the only word I can think of.
I know. There's so much about it that was wrong. But I wanted to talk to you about, going forward, the midterms coming up, of course, the RNC. You guys have a fantastic strategy for motivating people to vote in 2018. And there are a number of issues that have come up just in the past 7 days that I think underscore the need for Americans, specifically those on the right who have at one point or still do support President Trump or the Republican Party, to really wake up to the fact that if people don't turn out in November, we're talking about more of the same. We're talking about the same people who their surrogate, roasted. They call it roasting. I call it an attack, a verbal assault on Kellyanne Conway and Sarah Sanders. Those same individuals will be in charge of trying to remove the president of the United States. We can't stress that enough.
You have got it so right. And one of the many good things about having Republicans in control, and Donald Trump specifically in the White House, is that you have fighters who stand up and push back. If we don't have these majorities, and God forbid we leave Donald Trump defenseless without majorities around him, then you're right. We're going to see more of this. We are going to see just unfettered attacks because there won't be the people around to say, hey, this is wrong. And once again, just as we saw prior to 2016, the vast majority of Americans, those of us in our beloved shared home state of Missouri, will again be this silent majority and will again be this ignored majority, which is exactly what they do. That's the problem with what I saw on Saturday night, is that it was an unapologetic display of what they think is normal. And it's not normal. That's not normal to give such personal attacks on people just because you disagree with them politically. It's not normal to sit in a room of elitists in their bow ties in a hotel ballroom in Washington, D.C., and talk about these things as though they are the average everyday dinner conversations of everyday Americans. It's nothing about that is normal, but without the checks of a Republican majority, it goes on unfettered.
Exactly. And so I was wondering what you make of the fact that we're right in the midst, the throes really, of what they call the Me Too movement, which is supposed to be about women's empowerment. It's supposed to be about supporting women who've been victimized and giving them enough of an underpinning or enough support to be able to step out of the shadows and say, that man victimized me and, he needs to be brought to some kind of justice. But instead, we've seen women on the left, they feel empowered to bare their claws and their teeth and to literally tear open conservative women. And there's no remorse there. Kathy Griffin was just on The View talking about how she was investigated by the Secret Service for 2 months after she displayed what appeared to be a severed head of the President of the United States, and she still hasn't learned anything. So where are these champions of women's rights when people are attacked in such vicious ways as what happened over the weekend? Where are they?
You're right. Well, what they're doing is they're showing their stripes. They're out there in full force organizing marches and knitting profane caps when it's liberal on liberal for liberals, right? But as soon as they find out you're a conservative and, that you vote with values and with your conscience, we don't want any part of that, and you don't deserve the support of other women. And that really is what they're showing by what we saw on Saturday, what we see from Kathy Griffin, what you see across the board. It's the reason why, while so many people marched in the Women's March, there were millions of us pro-life women who knew we had no place in that march. They were not interested in including all women, only their women. And that really is the problem, and that's what we have to fight for. And I'm curious, you and I have talked about our book clubs and the conversations we get into during book club. And I was just having lunch today with a gal from my book club who is a Democrat, and we get into great spirited conversations. But she, too, was, I don't know if she'd go so far to say disgusted by the comments on Saturday night, but she agreed that this did nothing to push our collective agenda for a more respectful society. And so that to me says that what we see from these celebrities on the left is, again, so far out of touch with the everyday conversations we're having.
Well, it is. And I know a lot of women who are on the left, and they're genuinely kind-hearted, hardworking women with great families. A lot of them are they're women of faith. They go to church. They are Democrats, but they believe so much of what I believe. We just politically are different. And I don't, for one second, think that they are okay with the kinds of attacks that Sarah Sanders had to undergo, or Kellyanne Conway from the audience, because they're not President Trump. So for every person who says, well, the president said, grab him by the bleep. Yeah, the president said that 11 years ago. So if the president was there and you attacked him for saying that, that's one thing. But Sarah Sanders wasn't there 11 years ago, and she never said that. So how does it correlate? I just don't get how. I saw many, many people, regular women, defending these statements and the statements about abortion, the just all of it. They were just all in for it and happy to see it happen.
That was incredible to me, seeing that, and from these folks as part of the resist movement. But I also do think, going back to the midterms and what we saw in 2016, folks who voted for Donald Trump who had not voted for a Republican in recent history, if ever in their lives, because they saw that he represented, he was willing to fight for and represent folks who had not been well represented in so many recent years. And I think to this conversation, you're finding a lot of women who say, listen, I don't agree with this or that, or I'm all for the Me Too movement, or I'm for the Women's March movement, but this has gone too far, or this resist movement no longer represents me. And I think that may backfire for Democrats as well if they continue to allow these far left extremist folks like the woman who spoke at the Correspondents' Dinner, Michelle Wolf, to be their voice. I think that's going to further alienate them from the Democrat Party, and we should say we welcome you with open arms. We accept all good people over here and people with varying points of view, and come on over and be a part of our fight.
Yeah, we can't say that enough. And I think most people think that on the right, all of us conservative women, we all have exactly the same ideas and we don't have any difference of opinion. And that couldn't be further from the truth. I know dear friends of mine who really don't like President Trump, but they're on the right. And they've worked hard in the trenches to elect Republicans in the past. And they haven't said whether or not they voted for the president. They support other Republicans, but they're not fans of President Trump. But these are conservatives who are, they consider themselves to be Republicans. And so if there are people out there who you definitely don't align with the Democrats, but you're not so sure you're ready to jump on the Trump train, there's still room over here for you, because the whole side that we occupy, there are a lot of ideas over here. There are a lot of different feelings and directions. The main idea is that there are certain things we want to be for, which is we want to be pro-life. We want to be for a strong national defense. We want to be for borders. But what those things look like, that's a conversation. And there's room to have a conversation over here without being vilified or attacked.
You hit the nail on the head. There's room to have that conversation. And so far what we know on the left, we saw that they got involved in the Texas primaries where they chose a Hillary supporter over the Bernie Sanders-backed candidate, and the Bernie Sanders-backed candidate won, so that's going to be a problem for them in November. And then we saw just last week the House Minority Whip, Steny Hoyer, was unapologetic that he went out to Colorado to try and influence a primary out there and pick the winner and loser in their primary out there. They don't have room for free think. They are not interested in having a conversation with a free flowing of ideas to try and better understand where their voters are, and that's where their candidates need to be. They are only interested in projecting one view of a Democrat. And that's just not where we are as Republicans. And in fact, that's one thing that I really love about President Trump as our president, is that he has highlighted that there's a wide definition of a Republican and a big tent that we are all happy to gather under and have these conversations.
Yeah, and you don't have to worry about shenanigans in the primary on our side. Like, I know it's not a perfect process, but we definitely aren't having one campaign and one candidate actually fund and run the RNC in the background like a hand inside a puppet, while everyone on the surface thinks that their votes count and it's just basically already rigged from day one. We don't have anything like that going on in the RNC.
Absolutely, and much to the dismay of many establishment Republicans, when Reince Priebus was chairman of the RNC and we had 16 candidates in our primary, he said, let the voters decide. We will work the will of the voters. And the voters decided on then candidate Donald Trump to be our nominee, and see how well that worked out for us. Had he gone in and said, you name it, Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, Jeb Bush, Rand Paul, you pick your favorite, I'm going to pick my favorite out of that person, and we're going to use the full influence of the RNC to make them the nominee, that person never would have won the presidency, just as we kind of saw with Hillary Clinton, because they would not have had the full support of the voters and of the base. And so I commend him for standing firm in that belief and in his principles. And clearly he was right. And the Democrats, I don't think, have learned their lesson.
So right there, this is one of the main reasons why we love having Cassie on, is because what you just shared there, it's pure analytical gold, because not only have they not learned, but what we've seen is that a party unified behind a candidate can tip the election in just the right places to make the Electoral College win possible. And that is what Reince Priebus, his choices were, as you said. I'm sure that he faced huge pressure from, more establishment type people to choose someone safe. But in that was like a street fight. 2016 was a street fight, and it required a Donald Trump. Now, I know that there are things, he's not perfect. We can't, no one is. No one's perfect. He's not buttoned down. He doesn't wear sweater vests. He's a street brawler. That's why he won. But there's no way in my mind, hindsight's always 20/20, that you can look back and see any of the other candidates as being as primed and ready for what the Democrats threw at Donald Trump and what he's going through right now because of that. Because this deep state thing with the investigations and all that, I'm just wondering which of them would have been up for this, and it's been rough. And so I'm really happy for the work that you guys are doing at the RNC. I'm grateful for I'm always ear to the ground on what you guys are doing, and it's you're on top of it. You're ahead of the curve, and I'm just hoping for all the clips from the White House Correspondents' Dinner for those to make their way into ads to help us secure November of 2018, because nothing's given. We have to win it, and I think they gave us a lot of ammo at that dinner.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you are absolutely right, and you said it so well. And we are going to take that same approach for every congressional district and Senate seat this November, and we're doing that right now. But also, Stacey, to you, to other folks in the conservative radio movement, and to all of the listeners who are so loyal and some of our very best activists, that's what makes the difference, too, to push back against the mainstream media liberal narrative, because as we've discussed here today, without great conservative voices, these folks just go unfettered, and it's easy to think that you're in the minority, that's the majority thought. We have to have these continued checks, and it comes from this great network of strong conservatives to make that happen.
Well, that is the end of our time today. Cassie Smedile, RNC National Press Secretary, thank you for your time today. Talk again soon.
Talk soon. Thank you.
All right. So we'll be back with more after these important messages. Keep it here.
What is the greatest need in America? I believe the entire Church of Jesus Christ needs to convictionally come together in unified prevailing prayer for the next great move of God in America. What will it take for us to wake up, die to ourselves, and come together under the banner of the cross of Jesus Christ? Did you know that there is no instance in Scripture where God's people came together in humble, united prayer that He did not answer in addressing their need? Now, more than ever before, we must come together in clear agreement, visible union, and extraordinary prayer for the next great move of God in our country that will catapult us into the reaching the world with the life-changing message of the gospel of Jesus Christ. That's why I am calling for you to unite on May the 3rd with other believers in your city. I'm Ronnie Floyd, president of the National Day of Prayer.
Hi, I'm Larry Nix with Defining Moments. Join me every Thursday from 6 to 7 p.m. on Urban Family Talk. We talk to people of all ages, stages, phases, and places. From all walks of life, background, and cultures about serious matters, life-altering encounters, second chances, and even how to face life moving forward. Sometimes you hear us get emotional, sometimes you hear us laugh. But more importantly, you'll hear the truth that will set you free. All in Defining Moments every Thursday from 6 to 7 p.m. on Urban Family Talk.
Lonnie Poindexter.
Don't ever ask God for patience. Just say, oh, Lord, help me to be more patient. No, don't do that. Well, why, Lonnie? Why shouldn't I do that? He'll give it to you, but you're not going to like how you get it. Well, Lonnie, what do you mean? How do you get patience? Trials and tribulations, my brethren. That's how you get it.
Lion Chasers. Weekday mornings at 10 Central on Urban Family Talk.
Back to Genesis with Dr. John Morris, geologist and president of the Institute for Creation Research. Dr. Morris, in total, how many animal species have been found in the fossil record?
You know, Chris, the answer to this question surprised me. Evolutionists are fond of talking about millions and millions of fossil animal types, but in reality, only about 250,000 fossil species have ever been found. That's far fewer than the number of species that are still existing today. And it certainly is not many compared to the millions and billions of animals which must have existed if evolution were true. What we find in the fossil record are clams and snails and coral, the very same kind of animals that are alive today. Face it, Chris, evolution didn't happen. It's not happening today, and it didn't happen in the past, as recorded in the fossils. What happened is creation, just like it says back in Genesis.
To learn more about creation, get our free DVD called That's a Fact. Call us at 800-628-7640 and mention the promo code FACT.
This is Stacy on the Right on Urban Family Talk.
So Donald Trump says that the reason now, Nancy Pelosi was the reason to vote in 2010 because President Obama, and apparently now you are the reason Republicans should vote in the coming midterm because of impeachment. Your thoughts?
Well, first of all, he's absolutely correct that I am encouraging impeachment, but he's incorrect when he says and implies that at the rallies, people are saying, but he's done nothing wrong. That's not what they're saying back to me when I say impeach him. I don't say impeach him quite that way. I say impeach 45, and they go nuts, and they agree, and 70% of Democrats in a recent poll said he should be impeached.
Yeah, and we're putting that poll up right now. That's a poll from NPR and PBS NewsHour and the Marist organization. Among Democratic voters, 70% say impeach, 18% say not, and that meaning that they would prefer to vote for a candidate who wants to impeach Donald Trump.
Okay, so first of all, it's Joanne Reed, who is fresh off of her debacle with her old blog, The Reed Report, where she said things that most conservative people who are opposed same-sex marriage believe about same-sex attraction. Now she's not even backpedaling. She's saying, I couldn't have written those things. That's not even in the realm of possibility. But MSNBC is standing by her, and leftist organizations and gay rights organizations are not attacking her because they all got the memo. Leave her be. We need her. And if you take her down, then we have problems with the black community. And they're hanging on by a thread because they've got Kanye West and Chance the Rapper telling them they don't have to be Democrats. So leave it all right where it is. If it weren't for that, if she were a white pundit who had said these things, the gay lobby would have already taken her out. That's how it works over there. The coalitions have to be satisfied. And sometimes they get red meat, and other times they don't get anything, and they have to wait for the next time they get a scalp and parse out the leavings. I mean, otherwise, how do you explain it? So let's go to the phones. We have another bit from Maxine, but I love it when we get a chance to talk to the callers. We have John in Illinois. Thanks for calling Stacy on the Right.
Hello.
Hello. How's it going?
Hello there. Hey, I just wanted to let you know I'm a first-time caller. I'm a Trump supporter. I'm one of those deplorables. And I'm really glad that I tuned into you because this is the first time I've seen Stacy on the Right. And I like what I've been hearing so far. And one of the things I wanted to point out is that if there's anyone out there listening from the state of Illinois, please get out, and especially the black folks, get out, and let's get this country red. I'm concerned because Illinois, and I've been in this state for quite a few years, I would like to leave. I have a very special woman that I'd like to move out and go up to Minnesota, which is probably just as bad as Illinois because it's a very liberal state also. But the corruption that goes on in Illinois, and we used to always make a joke of it, it really opened my eyes to the amount of corruption that we have in politics in general. And it's really scary as hell when I think about it because my grandchildren are growing up, and there's so many things that are so questionable on what we're doing, and society scares the hell out of me anymore. I'm an older man, like I said, going to be retiring. The young generation kind of concerns me because they don't seem to have a lot of what I grew up with, which is common sense. And if we used and applied a lot of common sense in what we decide to do, it wouldn't be as hard for a lot of these people to figure this out. So I'd like to see Illinois get rid of the Democrats that we've had in here for I don't know how many decades. And I know that when the governor race came up, we had a young lady that was running on the Republican ticket that with a fraction of the money almost beat the incumbent. And I know I put my vote in for her, and it was really close and neck. So money plays a big role, but just getting the word out and making sure that we show up to the polls and vote, I think is going to be the best thing we can do to overcome the attacks that are going to come from the Democrats and the media and all associated things. So I'll listen to your response on that. But again, thank you so much for what you're doing. You're doing a great job, and I enjoyed being able to give you my 2 cents worth.
Thank you so much for calling in today, John, and sympathize with you with the state of Illinois. It's one of those things where it's like, can you stay there and withstand the increase in taxes and everything that's going on? Or do you leave for greener pastures in a state that's more red? You're right. Minnesota is a little bit, it's not as bad as Illinois, but it's definitely on the left. But hopefully all of us as Americans can find somewhere in this great country to really live out our freedoms. And you know, you'd think that these states that have these really difficult numbers, like Illinois has lost 600,000 Americans over the past few years, you'd think that it would be instructive, but they're in a catch-22 where they have to raise the taxes the more people they lose, and the more people they lose because they're raising the taxes, and because government's bad, and because corruption's bad, and because crime's bad. And it's sad. It's really sad. So thanks so much for calling the show. I want to get back to this Waters audio because it dovetails into our last interview with our good friend Cassie from the RNC. This is why you have to get out and vote. And it can be a situation where you just feel like on leading up, you just don't feel motivated. Well, get motivated. Get motivated now. Maybe squeeze your motivation out and save it. Stick it in the freezer. Warm it up about 2 days prior and be full of it going into election night, because we need conservatives to turn out in the midterms to make this thing work. We need, it's not a wish, it's a need. And I'm going to be praying about it, praying for people to be motivated to come out and render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's, because that's the tool that we have. That's the tool, the mechanism by which we can create these changes in our political spectrum is the vote. That's how it works. So you've got Maxine Waters, and in this bit of audio, you're going to hear her actually almost rote. It's almost like a conditioned response for her. There was collusion. He was with Russian oligarchs, and there's just there's not thought behind it. It's just bark it out. He's guilty. He has to be impeached because he did things with Russian oligarchs. It's number 3.
So why then do you suppose that so few Democrats are carrying that message? Tom Steyer, who's not officially, he's not an elected official in the Democratic Party, is running ads on it. You talk about it a lot. But Nancy Pelosi, just on Thursday, discussing impeachment, said the following.
I don't think that we should be talking about impeachment. I've been very clear right from the start. They criticized me when I was Speaker before for not impeaching President Bush. On a political side, I think it's a gift to the Republicans to talk about impeachment. What we want to talk about is what they're doing to undermine working families in our country and what we are doing to increase their payroll and lower their cost.
Your thoughts, Congresswoman?
Well, I respect that, and Nancy Pelosi has said all along that she really wanted everything geared toward talking about what we are doing and how we're working for the people and, about our public policy. I respect that, but, however, I'm with the 70%. I want him impeached. And so I continue to advocate for that because I think this is the most outrageous human being that could ever represent our country. And, of course, when you take a look at the lies that he has told, we take a look at all of his allies and their connections to Russia and to Putin and to the oligarchs. You cannot help but think that not only did they work to support him in the elections, and I think we know enough about that. They hacked into the DNC, that he certainly can be accused of collusion, and I think it's going to be proven. So it's a combination of collusion with Russia and obstruction of justice that I believe lead to this impeachment.
That she believes leads to the impeachment. Now, you guys know I have no love for Nancy Pelosi, but she makes a lot of sense when she says that the Democrats shouldn't be discussing impeachment because impeachment motivates voters on our side to move forward to do what they want to do, like to make sure that that doesn't happen. And so I hope they keep talking about it. I hope they keep putting it in their ads and they keep delineating between the candidates who want impeachment and the ones who don't to make it crystal clear for us who we have to keep out of D.C. So that being said, there's another news item. And I will also want to, this is one of those days where the news is coming so fast and heavy. It's like you're not even sure. So you've got the president actually declaring May as Jewish American Heritage Month. Something interesting from a guy that they say is a white supremacist anyway. And then you have the Office of the First Lady issuing a media advisory for the launch of First Lady Melania Trump's initiatives. So Monday, May the 7th, she will launch her initiatives and we'll get to find out what it is that she's going to have under her kind of list of working items going forward as the First Lady of the United States. And that's going to be on Monday. So I just saw that in my email box and it's going to be pretty interesting to see. Really. And so I want to also ask you guys, don't forget to catch me on NRA TV in the morning. Every Tuesday morning, I'm on Stenchfield speaking with Grant about 2A issues. And of course, you've got the National Rifle Association annual meetings where Vice President Pence will be speaking, and I'm media credentialed for those for the end of this week as well. So that's going to be fantastic. So let's quickly circle back around. We have just enough time, I think, to finish out the top 3 FBI information items for this FBI probe. And then, of course, we did mention with a couple of our guests, we discussed that Prime Minister Netanyahu revealed documents that prove that Iran has lied about their nuclear program. Now, this is just a week to the day after French President Macron and German Chancellor Angela Merkel were both in the United States discussing the Iran deal with the president at the White House. So Iran planned at the highest level to continue work related to nuclear weapons under different guises and using the exact same personnel. And that's a quote from Bibi Netanyahu. Now, do you see why everyone's been so upset about the Iran deal? Because no one believed them. And it's the reason why, God bless him, President Obama really did not think this thing through. He just went in and he's like, yeah, they're going to do what we want, sends him a pallet of cash and signs this deal. Unbelievable. and they got what they wanted. What they wanted was their money. Now they're using that money that we'd been keeping from them, money that we had sanctioned and control of because they were building a nuclear weapons program. Now they have that money and they're working even faster. You know, they've ramped up. So it's fascinating that behind all these different things that have been going on, the Israelis with their fantastic intelligence apparatus have been digging and they've hit pay dirt. So we'll report more on that. It's developing. Obviously, we'll report more. So back to this. If you're just joining the show earlier, and we've been kind of biting off of this as we've been working our way through the program, you got these 3 scary FBI scandal factors that you must know. You've got IG Horowitz, who he's been the Inspector General since the Obama administration, since 2011. He had the scope of his ability to investigate greatly impeded by Eric Holder, then Attorney General, because he was tasked with investigating corruption, waste, and abuse in the executive branch, not reporting to the executive branch, reporting to Congress. So they took every investigative mechanism he had at his disposal and the ability to subpoena documents. They just removed all of that from him. And then you have the second note of interest is about President Obama's prerogative, knowing that Hillary Clinton was using the homebrew server, knowing that she was, flouting the law on classification, and he tried to protect himself from that. And he's the true person they're protecting. It's really not about protecting Hillary Clinton. It's about protecting him. By extension, they protect her because that removes the jeopardy from him. So now you've got former Attorney General Michael Mukasey and former U.S. Attorney Andrew McCarthy making persuasive cases that protecting Obama and the Clinton email scandal was the key to the FBI's clearly bungled investigation. That brings us up to right now. So you've got Comey's July 2016 nationally televised announcement that he would not recommend prosecution of Clinton due to her extreme carelessness, which was a misclassification of her activities. Now, one of the drafts of Comey's announcement referred to Clinton emails between her and the president. But as Andrew McCarthy recently pointed out, a revised draft of Comey's remark that was circulated by his chief of staff, Jim Rabicki, replaced the president with the phrase, another senior government official. And then the third item is the spook sting. The 2 scandals are loaded with spy masters. The most powerful ones aren't even in the FBI. Former Director of National Intelligence James Clapper, former CIA Director John Brennan, Susan Rice, Samantha Power. Does it make sense? These are the breadcrumbs that are being followed to lead to the true collusion, true wrongdoings, true malfeasance. It's not President Trump. All right, we'll be back with more tomorrow here on Stacy on the Right. Have a blessed evening.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast do not necessarily reflect those of Urban Family Talk, Urban Family Communications, or American Family Association.
Urban Family Talk. Urban Family Talk.
Hey, I'm Miki, co-host of Aaron the Addisons on Urban Family Talk. I want to invite you to be part of our online chat community we've affectionately called The Churban. While you listen to your favorite programs, you have the opportunity to